Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. I'm here with Ryan.
Hello, everybody.
Ryan, what I guess I could say, what defines you? It's a deep question.
What defines me? Hmm. Um, I think the fact that I like movies because I really don't have anything interesting about myself personally. So everything that is interesting about me comes through the things that I watch and then talk about.
What are you analyzing when you watch these movies, and what movies in particular? Because I'm a fan of like a lot of movies that people just think are trash.
Well, for me, it could be any movie. Like I have no set of criteria. It's kind of just uh, the only thing that I have as kind of a requirement is that I don't like to watch two of the same thing in a row. So if I watch a horror movie, then I have to watch a musical next. Or if I watch a comedy, then I have to watch a drama after that.
Oh my God, a
Because
musical.
otherwise it gets boring.
Are you trying to torture yourself by watching a musical?
Musicals are awesome.
No, no,
Musicals are
no, no,
so
no.
cool.
Don't give me that, dude. Oh, that's the one genre of movie where I'll just walk out. I'd rather listen to a symphony, like an actual symphony with violins, where I could be like, that dude is really blowing into that trombone. Not a musical, man. You can't mix the two. That's madness.
So uh what is your aversion to musicals?
I've never seen one and I don't want to.
You've never seen one?
I saw Anne Hathaway's teeth in Les Miserables, and I was like, that's too much for anyone. I'm good. I'm gonna take a pass on that ticket. I will watch a show that talks about the moist factor of bread. I don't care. I don't.
Well, I mean, if you enjoy movies, I say you have to watch Singing in the Rain. It is such kind of a distilled version of happiness, kind of put into an hour and 45 minutes, that you will see past the fact that people are singing and dancing and just see just this kind of magic that is being just radiating from this film. And it won't change your opinion on the genre per se, but it will show you that there is something of merit in these movies.
I think the only type of musical I've really seen was there was like an episode of Scrubs where it really they sang throughout the whole episode. I guess the woman had like a brain aneurysm that caused her to hear everything in like song form or something.
Yes, I
That
do. I
was
do believe I remember that.
that was the biggest tragedy I've ever seen in that show. Honestly, anytime that popped up on Netflix while I was sleeping, when Scrubs was on there, it would be like playing the next episode or something. As soon as that one came up, it would wake me up in my sleep. I would be like, hell to the no. And then I would turn it off.
See, you can't judge musicals based on Scrubs. That's not fair.
That's how I know all my medical facts. Somebody tells me they're dying of like, I ate a bunch of Raisin Bran and I can't go to the bathroom. I'm like, you have stomach cancer. That's what Scrubs tells me. So it must be true.
Well, I guess touche. I can't really counteract that. I guess.
Would you say that your perspective or your insight, because the way you're talking about it, you're really kind of analyzing the kind of the key features in film, which I never really truly did until I took a, I would say, filming class in high
Mhm.
school. And I kind of have more appreciation. I started to look back at a lot of older movies that I saw when I was a kid. Like one of my all-time favorites that I have way more respect for, also problems with, is a movie called Signs. I was on a guest podcast with my buddy who talks about movies and what they mean to us. His name's Chuck. And we were talking about Signs, and I really had a deeper appreciation for the film because I think from being grown up from when I was as a kid, I understood more about the parents' perspective that they were throwing into the movie, more about the family bond and the deep ties that connect us together with people that we love. Like I really analyzed that a lot more now that I can understand that from like maybe my parents' perspective. Because when you're a kid, you're just like, you're trying to control me. And then once you're an adult, you're like, wow, you actually were trying to look out for me.
Mhm. Uh, yeah. Well, Science is like an interesting case in that it's I mean, like, M. Night Shyamalan is a father, so, like, all of those anxieties, I think that are something that are very personal to him, and I think that that movie in particular, like, I have serious faults with it simply because of, the logic that everybody has issues with. Like,
Y-
why would
Why would
aliens come to a
Alien?
planet that is 70% water? Like,
Gotta
like,
look
okay,
past that.
whatever. I
You
mean,
gotta look past it.
there are stupider twists in much more popular movies, but whatever.
Bird
Putting that
Box.
aside, yeah, exactly. Uh, the this like there's a lot of his movies that are very unrelatable because they're just the characters are too alienated and they're too unlikable, or they're just it's him trying to portray characters that he clearly doesn't understand. But I think that in that movie in particular, it's like the last time that I think I can look at a Mel Gibson character and go, okay, I see where that guy's coming from. I think I understand him psychologically. And that entire movie, like, it's his sense of craft is kind of at its peak. That's right when it's right after he makes Unbreakable. So he knows exactly what he's doing with the camera in every single scene. He's a pretty much a virtuoso at that point. He's a little full of himself, but he can back it up for the most part. But when I think about that movie, the stuff that you mentioned, that's what sticks with me. Like the scene where the aliens come and they're all in the house and they're upstairs and Mel Gibson is telling his kids the stories of how they were born. Those are the stories of Shyamalan's actual kids and how what the anxieties he had when they were actually born. And it's probably one of the most like personal things that a filmmaker, especially a popular filmmaker, has put into a movie in the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years. And it's one of those things where even if I don't really respond to the movie overall, or even if I have serious issues with it, those little things, they do add up. And those are the kind of things that I look for in movies.
Seems like a lot of movies nowadays don't really focus on those factors. It seems like everything seems like they got a budget and they could throw a bunch of stuff at it, or it's got a name behind it, or it's either like very few movies have really lasted an impact on the people. There's one movie in particular that came out not so long ago, and they're supposed to be making more of them, but James Cameron's taking his sweet ass time doing so, and that's Avatar. It's the only type of movie that has really caused a severe mass amount of depression in people on two factors. One, the idea that that could be possible where we could transport our minds into bodies that are of alien form and be able to live on a planet. And two was seeing how Pandora was so natural and man's devastation to it during the movie has really caused a lot of people to reflect on Earth, where people have been getting very, very depressed over factors like that. Star Wars kind of does a little bit of depression when it comes to that. We're not that far into space or everything as we would like to be, at least they were projecting us to be. But movies nowadays, they just seem mindless. A lot of them really lack like a really good blockbuster, like something that would be like, damn, like you would talk about. Like I said, I love movies people hate. I fucking loved Hubie Halloween. A lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it was the slapstick Sandler comedy that, like, Don't Mess with the Zohan. If you look at that movie today, it would not be able to be played today on the so many factors that it crosses lines that we don't want crossed anymore. People don't take the racism jokes or any of those things where it was stereotypical, where they were talking about like hacky sack tournaments and Don't Mess with the Zohan. Dave Matthews was a racist redneck that was like, I hate puppies and everything people love. It's just said he hated. And then what he likes Wall Street. He likes all these things that are known as corrupt companies. That was the joke. But it's like playing blackface in Tropic Thunder. We've evolved to where that's not funny anymore and that can never get made again. I'm like, but you knew you were laughing at it because of how ridiculous it was. And movies nowadays, they're either reflashing some old shit where it's not good as it was before. It seems like they did it wrong, and you blame, oh, they just, that movie remake was terrible. It's like, no, it was because that was a movie set for that time period. We need to find a concept that evolves with this time period. Have one that really lasts an impact. Netflix is only tossing you stand-ups or documentaries, and at this time, I think a lot of people, we need those family movie nights. Those were some of the most impactful in my childhood.
Yeah, our current culture, especially in terms of movies, is we we've gotten past this point where we used to we used to have an entire industry that was small budget, mid budget, large budget, and it was this idea that the the story then dictated the budget, and you would make the movies that you felt would appeal to certain audiences, and then kind of spend accordingly. And now we make movies that have to appeal to everybody because we spend so much money on them, and we've gotten rid of mid-budget. We now just have the tiny movies and the absolutely huge movies. And there's no room in the absolutely huge movies for anything that is particularly personal or that is particularly kind of soulful. It has to, you have to sell something that means everything to everybody at the same time, which ultimately means nothing. Like if you play a trailer for a movie and your objective is to get the kids in the audience, their parents' parents, men, women, children, everybody feeling the exact same thing, then you're just going to have something that is just by the numbers and is completely uninteresting. But as studios invest more and more in these movies and spend less time kind of diversifying their portfolio, these movies are just going to get bigger and more impersonal. And we're going to get to the point where these industries collapse like they did in the 1960s. And the idea of the studio system will then kind of go away and be taken over by streaming services, as they're kind of on the way to do right now. And if this were like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I would say, well, that's a terrible thing. I don't want this to go away. But uh, sometimes collapse is kind of necessary, and sometimes we gotta kind of take stock of how we're going as storytellers and how we're going as consumers, and we're not going in the right direction.
I
I know
think
that much for sure.
I heard someone bring up a point that they didn't like Space Force, the Netflix thing with Steve Carell, because they said there wasn't enough Asian actors involved with it. And I had heard a podcast with Jimmy Yang, who was involved in that series, who was one of the scientists for the America side. And he said that was an issue. They were looking for Asian actors because they had this role or they had this position they had to fill. So it was like that those scenes where they needed them took an extremely long time, a couple of months, to try and find a good fit. They ended up using his dad as one of the people, but it was like, how many movies are stalled or stopped or put on hold or lost ideas because of the idea that you have to please everybody? Where it's like, I have to, well, you got to make sure you have this for what those people might say or for what these people might say. Make sure it's not hurting these people's feelings or it gets taken down. It's like, then you're losing the craft of an idea that you have. I don't think anybody crafts out an idea to like, I'm going to make an all white cast movie unless you're Quentin Tarantino and that's the objective of the movie. I don't think that's what people are going for. I think it's more like, this is who I envision. I want Brad Pitt to fill this role. Well, Brad Pitt doesn't have Comanche or Native American in his blood, so you have to find a famous guy who's a Native American actor. It's like you get to see lost works. Like, I don't think it's a bad I don't think it's a bad thing. If you have a certain cast, I don't really care about the cast type. I'll watch an all Chinese movie, I'll watch a whatever. If it's a good movie, it's a good concept to a thing, I'm not gonna let that diminish it. But like, that's gotta be a whole fear for directors trying to create a movie and then trying to have to please an audience that is, you're always gonna have someone that's not gonna agree.
I think, well, I think in terms of just those issues, like kind of making movies kind of more diverse and making them uh, kind of directed to more audiences, that stuff I have absolutely no problems with, because I grew up like my dad's from Costa Rica. My mom is from here. And I grew up watching countless movies and never saw myself in a single one of them. I have spent my entire life kind of hoping that somebody sometime would finally kind of tell a story where somebody like me was worth putting on screen. And I felt that the reason that that didn't happen is because nobody kind of pressured them to do it, because we kind of have a system where it's a largely kind of white, cisgender, male controlled system. Those are the people that get to decide what stories are told. Those are the people that then decide who the next storytellers are going to be when they're done. And I think that unless we kind of push them to be more inclusive or push them to have certain requirements, I don't know that that's ever going to change. And
How do you
that might
explain
just
M.
me
Night
being
Shyamalan?
more reactionary, but
How,
that's how I see it.
how do you explain M. Night Shyamalan? Like, I mean, I can agree with you on the fact I don't see myself in any of movies ever. Like, if you're talking about what there's a white person in a movie, that's not what I'm looking at. I don't envision myself as any of these people. I just look at them as their actors. I get the industry definitely has an issue with stuff too. I just look at how I think what's amazing about superhero films is when you leave the superhero's mask covered up 100%. Stan Lee talks about it when he was drawing the comics. He gave any child, no matter your race, no matter your gender, to be able to put themselves in that situation because the person was masked. You could envision yourself as that superhero. I think that was amazing. But I don't see myself in any of these movies that come out now. I think there's just an issue with then we need more films about stuff like this, more concept. If I'm a director and I'm picking out a cast for a movie, I'm not tossing out big names. I'm picking out whoever best fits the role. Doesn't matter your race, gender, any of that stuff. I just look at that like M. Night Shyamalan, for instance. He's not a white director, but he cast white people for his roles. Is that just because he thought those would be better fits? I mean, in Signs, what's his name? Joaquin Phoenix was supposed to be Mark Norman, or not Mark Norman, the guy who played Mark Ruffalo, the guy who plays in the Hulk. He just had a cast mindset in his head. Didn't matter, just whoever best fit the talent for it.
I suppose I don't know that. Uh, I mean, with M Night Shyamalan, he's making movies that I don't think that he's trying to make movies that appeal to a specific niche audience. I think that he was trying to appeal to the masses, and the way that you've been able to appeal to the masses for 120 years is with white actors and with white characters. That's that's kind of how it's code for mainstream. And there's this conception in the industry that that black films don't travel, that Asian films don't travel, that Hispanic films don't travel. And what holds up blockbusters from having diverse casts is that sure they can succeed in America, but once we try to sell them to foreign countries where we make most of our money, they don't want to watch these movies because they're not mainstream enough. And I think that is kind of where the problem lies. Is that there's this idea that somebody's race would affect how somebody buys a ticket. And with that mentality, that's what's kind of hanging us up.
Guess I can agree with that. I mean, the movies I have for examples would be like Rush Hour or Death at a Funeral. I mean, I just look at things like I look at the topic of the movie. If it's not something I'm gonna, if it's a love thing, if it's Twilight, if it's something like that, I'm probably not gonna watch it. But if it's something that's funny, humor, I'll give it a shot, no matter whatever. I thought Friday was a great movie, but I mean, it makes sense. I look at a director's perspective of even if you're held up in recording or directing something because you don't have enough Asian actors or you don't have enough of this, I'm like, when do we fill the thing here? What is the line to be drawn? I mean, is that given a token? Like, is that just having that many in there or something? I just it never made sense to me because when I watch movies, I'm more considered about the concept. Really, I've only met a few or seen a few actors that I could say that have really kind of stuck out as those are the main ones in the film. Like for Signs, for me, Mel Gibson's role was just capsulating, or captivating, I would say. I mean, it was something where I was like, damn, like he really played that part perfectly. But in other movies too, it's just like I really don't narrow it down to the acting unless the acting was bad. Like you could tell when there's a movie that has a really good script, but the actor just didn't fit the role. Or you can tell that this movie was based on the budget and not really worried about the actors, where they just got nameless faces to play.
Hmm. Uh, yeah. With the difficult thing about kind of seeing who's quote unquote right for a role is like characters should be able to be played by anybody. Unless it's a very specific thing of, well, your movie is set in Australia in the outback. Then, well, clearly the people that live in the Australian outback are either Aborigines or Australian people. Like that's a very specific thing. Or if you are setting your movie in Rwanda, then you're going to have African characters. That is a foregone conclusion. The problem is, uh, although that's the accurate way of doing things, movies don't necessarily the people that are making these big popular movies are not interested in telling those stories. They're interested in telling stories about people that already have lots of stories being told about them. And they're interested in portraying these stories with actors that look like what they think is a marketable way of looking. And I think that it's a systemic issue that kind of needs to be uprooted from the very bottom. We need to pay attention to the fact that we've been doing this in this entire industry for at least 120 years, and we're still at an impasse where it's controversial if half of your cast is not white. That is still that is considered a box office gamble. And it's not it's not the fault of analysts, it's not the fault of the audiences. It's the fault of this industry that could actually look at this and go like, well, we don't have entirely a white cast. So we got to be careful. We can't spend that much money on this because we might lose something. And it's not because we don't have a good idea or we don't have uh, a strong vision. It's that we don't know how we can market this to people that don't like people who aren't white. And it's a complicated, kind of often at times ugly thing to kind of confront. But we really need to kind of as a society really take it in and really kind of think about our own implicit biases, whether we want to acknowledge them or not. They're there and they need to be kind of reckoned with.
Do you think the issue goes a little bit deeper just to the way we've projected with society with this overall view of what fits what description? Like, for instance, Paul Blart, he couldn't be a Brad Pitt type or a supermodel type. He's always been casted for roles that were making fun of like humor, comedy, his weight. Even at one point, his manager had told him that if he lost weight, he was going to lose roles because that's the character. They would get a goofball, a clumsy, a knock it around type, a Chris Farley type based on his size. But you couldn't picture him in a superhero costume or a superhero role. So it even goes farther than that. Even like with not having a size zero model as a sexy secretary or something, or sexy cop. It was Melissa McCarthy or whatever in that one cop movie. Like that was the whole thing. It was still humorous. It wasn't taken in a very serious light based on just the way society thinks of things. You need to be perfect teeth, all these other types of things to be able to focus in on this is the character. That's the mental or the mentality of what directors think should be when it's not really the case anymore.
Yeah, it is. it's certainly a societal thing, and I think that uh, the one thing that the entertainment industry can do that kind of a lot of industries can't is they can change the conversation. They can all they have to do is find a good movie and kind of buck those stereotypes. All they have to do is make at least one movie where somebody is not of a traditional weight and is the protagonist, is competent, is not a joke, and have that movie succeed. And really, it takes one thing to kind of set everything in motion. And it's not going to be an overnight thing. We're not going to solve these issues with just one movie. We're not going to solve these issues with just one positive portrayal, but we have to actually, I mean, attempt something. We talk about all the time how that it's wrong that society has all these imposed ideas of what perfection is and what acceptability is, and then we don't do shit. We actually have to kind of change the paradigm, and even if it's like a dumb comedy like a Paul Blart movie, uh, you can affect change with these kinds of movies if we kind of be more empathetic and we kind of try and show that there is a spectrum to this stuff, that it's not just, oh, that guy's fat and he's on a scooter, that's funny, because that's I guess that's inherently a joke. uh you can you can change things if you make the effort, and unfortunately I don't think that we bother to make the effort as much as we profess to want to do so.
So a lot of it's kind of like smoke and mirrors, I would say, like trying to show an image of yourself that's good, but not really thinking that down in your mind.
Yeah, I would say it's that, and it's also a lot of lip service. It's a lot of, you see, we are totally on your side. We are absolutely committed to being more responsible and to showing that everybody is different and not everybody has to look the same. And that if you look different, that's okay. You're still a human being. Y- These are all nice things that we can say at press junkets and we can say in interviews, but you have to back it up with the movies. You have to back it up with the TV shows. You have to back it up with the actual portrayals. And the examples of us actually doing that are so far and few between that uh, I don't really see us making that much progress.
What are your predictions for the future? I know, like from movie industry, for instance, like I know there's going to be a big issue with the fact that COVID's kind of stopped recording or made it way more difficult because people have to quarantine in between takes, and you have to have different people on set, whether it's the prop people, then you got to have the actors on. Is it going to get better? Are we going to find a new way to do it? Like, is a lot of stuff going to come out to just be animation for a short amount of time until the thing blows over, or what would you say?
So I have a few thoughts on this. Uh, First, we have to kind of see what's going to happen to the exhibition industry, because if theaters go away, and it's looking increasingly likely, like at least the big ones are, and I mean the independent ones were already struggling before COVID happened,
Yeah,
and now,
I just drove by 3 that were all closed down. Besides doing drive-ins again, maybe, but we had a
yeah, I
brand new
mean
one built
that's,
that was over $1.5 million spent into it, and they're like, "We're only open on Saturdays." I'm like, "You know how many people you're gonna get on a Saturday?" Like,
yeah, it's really, I mean, like I don't feel terribly bad for the big kind of conglomerate theaters because they've been throttling the life out of independent theaters for decades. But it, I mean, no matter who owns a theater, the theatrical experience is something that is unequaled for me. And if it goes away, I don't know what I'll do with myself. But it is something that we all have to sit and seriously think about because it is definitely a possibility at this moment. So you have that to consider. You also have this idea that if uh, before COVID, we got to the issue where we are doing small budget and large budget. And so these $200 million movies that are, unless it's like a comic book adaptation or it's an evergreen intellectual property, they're doing kind of not great business. And if theaters aren't around and all you have are streaming services, is that a financially viable way of making your money back? I don't think it is, but time will tell. Uh, so you have that situation. So if these $200 million movies start really failing on these streaming services because they don't have theaters to back them up, does that mean that mid-budget movies will come back, or that they'll invest more in smaller budgets, or that they'll still make the huge budget movies, they'll just make less of them? I don't know, but either we're on the kind of the precipice of the end of the studio system, just like in the 60s, or we're in kind of the first stages of a new studio system that is learning to adapt to this new reality. But first, we have to take care of all the movies that were in production when COVID hit, and all the movies that were in development when COVID hit, movies that collectively cost billions of dollars. So we'll see how that works out, but that is going to determine the future.
I know I talk about how music has changed with the industry on the factor that most sales went from like, oh, your record went triple platinum to now it's downloads. Well, I know some movies that are coming out where the person that was involved in the movie was talking about how it's available on Microsoft Store if you want to watch it on Xbox or something like that, or you could buy it on demand. And they're like, what about Netflix? Why hasn't Netflix picked this up? Why hasn't Hulu picked this up? And the reason why I was like, oh, it's not available there. It's like, why? Is because they're not interested? It's like, no, it's not a Netflix or Hulu thing. It's the idea that we can't tell how many downloads or watches someone gets through Netflix or Hulu. We get our sales, our record, like ticket sales, since movie theaters are closed, off of on demand when someone purchases a movie or when someone buys it off Microsoft Store. I think it's going to evolve to that if movie theaters end up closing, which is, God forbid that happens, because that's honestly one of the best experiences is going to a movie theater. You're supposed to go in there and fucking smell popcorn, where it's like, oh shit, I got to get one now. You know what I mean? And then you're supposed to, I didn't like the recliners factor. I thought that was too much freedom. But picking out a candy and stuff. Some of the best moments I've had were going with my grandparents to go see Death at a Funeral or see I Am Legend in theaters. Well, that's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, the theatrical experience is something that is, especially when I was a kid, it didn't matter what movie I was seeing. It was that I was seeing a movie.
You would take the handicap
And
seats just to have the leg room.
and like I have these amazing memories of sitting in like I grew up like right as the multiplex was coming into its own. So I living in California, we used to have these back when Century Theaters was Century and not Cinemark. There's in San Jose they called them the Century 20s. So they were these huge dome theaters, and they were Century 21, 22, and 23 across the street from one another. And it was one screen that was maybe I don't know 80 or 90 feet across, not quite an IMAX, but it was before IMAX was uh, something that was you could watch in a regular theater, not just like in a museum. And there are times like my parents took me to basically any movie that was PG or PG-13 because they would never take me to something that was rated R because they were very specific about that. But it didn't matter what we were seeing. I would even looking back at those times, I still there's plenty of those movies that I have really no feelings about whatsoever. But that experience of just being there and experiencing something amongst all these other people and having something kind of wrap around my entire field of vision and just allowing me to be there in that moment, that is an experience that I will treasure for the rest of my life, even if the movie was terrible. I don't even remember most of the movies I saw, but I do remember how they made me feel. And that is something that I am terrified is going to go away.
I probably would have enjoyed Avengers Endgame a lot more if I would have saw it in theaters, but I was like, I'm not sitting for 3 hours. I sat through King Kong. This is like my worst movie experience. Uh, I had gotten, I think I was like when King Kong, the Peter Jackson one first came out, not Kong Skull Island, the other one with Jack
Naomi
Black.
Watts.
Jack Black's in that one too, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I that night, that day, I had a report card in my book bag. I had to give my parents that were going to say I needed a conference in school because I got straight Fs, and there was going to need to be a huge meeting. So I was like, "Oh shit, I'm going to hold on to this for the rest of the night or whatever." So we went to go see the movies. Like I'll tell them after. Yo, that movie lasted like 5 hours in my mind. So whenever whenever I even look at my game that's sitting on my whatever on my Xbox or something that is that game from that movie series, I think of that because if that movie seemed like it lasted years. And then on the ride home, I remember telling them like, "Hey, I got F's on my report card after like the amazing movie." But what about the movie? You know, like that whole thing. But like the reason why I love The Dark Knight, I don't think it's like a good movie. I mean, in my mind, it's amazing because that was the movie I went to with my dad. And in the first 5 minutes at that bank scene, my dad was like, "Holy fucking shit." And like hearing my dad say that at such a young age, I was like, "Oh my God, you just cursed." He's like, "Don't tell your mom." He's like, "This is awesome." I'm like, "Yeah, like that's where I enjoyed it." I think a lot of it has to do with the experience being involved in it. I watched Avengers Endgame on my phone. Most of the movie I was in the bathroom just on my phone and I was watching Avengers Endgame. Shitty buffering quality. I saw Shazam on my phone. I still like that movie, but it's an issue because it doesn't give you the full effect of going to see it in film or going to see it in theaters. And especially down here in my town, the movies change constantly. There's always a new one. I didn't even see Wonder Woman in theaters. I didn't even know it came out, to be honest with you. I saw it for like a second on the billboard and it was gone. I was like, where did that go? I thought that was going to be a big, there's just a lot of films where it's like you didn't get much attention, so they end up taking it down.
Yeah. It was when I was a kid, there was nothing that I enjoyed more than going to a theater, and it became my religion. Like I grew up, my mom was religious, like very religious. My dad, he didn't give a shit, but my mom in particular was really pushing uh for church and all that shit. And I had no interest whatsoever because I'd never believed in anything. But going to a movie, that was my church. That was a religious experience for me. That was something that if I could sit in a dark room and watch a story unfold over the course of 2 hours and kind of bombard me sensorially with just sound and images, that is there's something elemental about it. There's something that the first time I was in a movie theater and sat through a movie, I don't even remember what it was, but I just remember that I was thinking, even at age like 3 or 4, this is for me. This is something that I could do tomorrow. I could do the day after tomorrow, and I could keep coming back here every day and not get tired of it. And then, like when I entered my 20s, I got tired of kind of making the effort of going out and seeing movies, and kind of pushed that aside and watched more movies on DVD and stuff. And then as I then entered my 30s, it became, well, this isn't satisfying anymore. I can't keep watching movies on TV. This is not, movies were not made to be seen on TV unless they're direct to video. That's just not, I mean, it's not, if you see a movie on TV, it's a butchering, it's terrible. That's
There's an effect
against
that
the
gets
artist's
taken out of it.
intents.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's partially true, but it's an exaggeration. But then I started going back to the movies again, and then I realized, oh, this I was missing this. This is something that this was a hole that was kind of in my heart that needed to be filled again. And before COVID hit, at my local AMC, they had this thing called A List, where you could, for $20 a month, they give you 3 movies a week, every week. And I literally, I would check the app on my phone every 5 hours just to see what the next show times were gonna be, to make sure that I got my 3 movies every week. And then COVID hit, and immediately I'm like, "Okay, well, then this is not gonna be a thing. This year is going to suck." But hey, it'll be over soon, lockdown will be done, then everything will come back, I can go back to the movies, and this will all just be a bad dream, we can all move on. Not the case. And it is there's a lot of things that are causing me stress right now, going on in the world, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that this was in the top 3 of my concerns, that I won't be able to do this again.
Yeah, I think movies are a great escape, just like any activity. I mean, the way you're talking is not shy out of the realm of things I've experienced when it comes to like the gym is my escape. I got locked down too, and then everyone has this way of kind of trying to escape from a lot of the stresses of life. And I could see where movies could come in, especially being in a theater when you're so focused in on actually one thing. It's a lot like you talk about. There's that effect that's taken out when you're at home. Movies aren't really meant to be watched at home. It's nice if you're on date night or something, but there's an effect that gets drawn out of the room. Either you're really into the movie or the person you want to watch the movie is on their phone, like I am watching. It's like, no, you're not. There's just everything so distracting you that once because your brain wants to go off into a million different things at a minute instead of just focusing in on this is what's going on right now. Like I saw the movie Up in 3D, which was terrible because we had front row tickets. So it's like you just stare at the middle of the screen hoping it just comes by your view or something or whatever the spot was you're looking at. Gave me a headache. But it was important to be there because everything was making you focus in on that. I didn't pull out my phone. I didn't pull out anything. I was tuned into the movie so I can remember it 100% in detail, much like every movie I've seen in theaters. But when I'm at home, half the time I'm missing out on something because I'm just staring at my phone or something. I'm like, the effect gets taken out. The whole experience gets taken out. You want to talk about the movie afterwards when you walk outside. You want to start talking about, wow, it was an amazing movie, or wow, that movie was shit. Every movie when it comes to like the Spider-Man movies, even though as much as I hate Tom Holland, that is my buddy's all-time favorite series is the Spider-Man series. So me and him go to the theaters when they were open and we'd go and see them. I have all the ticket collections and little things. And I'm afraid I can't experience that again. That's going to be a thing. I have a Fox movie theater coupon that I got for my birthday, which was in December, of $30 to go spend at the movies. I was planning on doing $5 Tuesdays when they do it at the movie theater with my buddy and getting some more tickets to add to my wall, my collection of tickets that I've seen, all the Fast and Furious. I hate every single one, but I watch them because of him. But mostly he buys the ticket. But I'm like, I'm never going to experience that again. And it's going to come down to watching them at home. And there are some movies that still have an impact at home. A Christmas Story has a major impact at home. Things that are holiday movies kind of still hit good at home. But there's nothing that beats the feeling of a theater. Nothing that beats waiting in line, nothing that beats the smell of popcorn, nothing that beats just even if you're awkwardly trying to fight over a cup holder with some random dude beside you. Like there's something there that really stains into your memory rather than watching something at home.
Yeah, I like with DVD and now streaming, I totally understand why people would enjoy watching a movie at home because it's utterly convenient. It's you don't have to if you have kids and you want to go out for date night with your spouse, you don't have to find a babysitter, drive all the way down to a theater, park your car, buy $30 worth of tickets, blah blah blah. You can just sit down, put on a movie. It's very convenient. But that's also the problem because these, by their very nature are not convenient. They're they are very much an experience. They are something that when you sit down in a movie theater, you don't have the option to press pause. You don't have the option to rewind. You don't have the option to fast forward. If you don't like something or you're feeling frustrated, you have to stay in that moment and be present. If if somebody's trying to build a world around you, you have to be a participant in that movie. You can't just get up and walk away or go to the bathroom and then make a sandwich and then come back. It makes it a very passive experience. The theater requires you to take part in this adventure with the filmmaker and with the audience that you're with. And that's something that can't be replicated at home and probably shouldn't be replicated at home. But good movies can survive at home. The best movies will translate to your television. They'll translate to your, I mean, probably not your phone, but maybe. I don't know. I've never watched a movie on my phone, so I don't know. But if a
Not that
movie is
you'll
good
admit
enough, you can
to.
watch it on your TV. No, no, I've never. Uh, it, the best movies, you can watch them in any way at any time and they'll work. But there is no denying that when a filmmaker makes a movie, a cinematic experience, that there is one way that they wish you would see it, and that's in a theater.
I agree with that. I mean, it was like when I saw Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer in theaters. Nobody fucking saw Lincoln. That was not happening. Everybody was like, I want to watch Abraham Lincoln chop up vampires instead of seeing the actual real thing that actually might give me some intelligence. But no, it was an experience and it always is one. And do you think that it's just going to end up reverting to drive-throughs, or do you think it's going to end up just opening back up and say, there's a risk here, but we got to start opening back up because people are going into second lockdowns, and my town's like, we're not having it, just because the amount of depression that went through that, people committing suicide, losing businesses. It's really hard when you see, like I talk about, I would love to revert back to the old days where it was like I could skate through my town and see all of my stores, see like the old classics, not all the newest ones that are getting built and then rebuilt every single like month or so. But now it's like you're going by and everything's just like a dusted remains of the old, of the what it was. You know what I mean? And you just look at it like, this isn't a classic look. This is a depression look.
Yeah. I don't know how we're gonna kickstart this thing back open, simply because we don't know what the end game of this situation looks like. We
Endgame.
don't know. We still don't have a vaccine, so we still don't have uh, a clear through line to success. We're still looking at this as, well, maybe things will get better, and then when they get better, we can open things up. And as long as things are simply hypothetical, I really don't know how we're going to see this through. But what it seems like to me is that the people that are freaking out about not being able to go to the movies are the ones that they really rely on it. And I think that most people, as far as what I've been able to see, have been able to adapt to this non-theater world. Have been able to, like, people have been preparing for a while to go to Netflix for their movies. They've been, it wasn't in like large droves that people were like, I don't need to see that in a theater. I'm just going to go to Netflix. But there is this kind of complacency that comes with streaming services that we've been preparing for a while. And now that we have virtually every major corporation has their own streaming service, and they're all doing relatively decent business. Like, Disney starts, uh, what was it, 12 months ago, and now they have 73 million subscribers. That's
That's the
and they
Mandalorian.
really they put out, in terms of just movies, they put out maybe one movie a month. So people are, they're not so much, I don't think they really care about the movies so much as just that there's going to be content. And when they closed down theaters like back in March, it was the cinephiles that were freaking out, but everybody else was like, okay, well, I guess I don't have to spend $30 to take my kids to go see something. I guess that's not so bad. As long as movies will be available for me to see in some capacity, I guess I'm not going to be too upset about it. And really, the people that are going to fight for the theatrical experience, I don't think that are as numerous as they need to be. So it is probably more of a dire situation than we're actually willing to accept and that we're actually willing to acknowledge. But the next year or so is really going to determine the outcome of that.
hoping it's a positive one, man, because
Me too.
it's not looking with everything going back to how it was before. I'm kind of a little shaky on it, but I mean, I hold out hope. I'm not going to quote Star Wars and say A New Hope, but I definitely think that we're just going to have to do it. Like I work at a gym, so it's like you sign a waiver and you're good to go. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's the opportunity. I mean, if you really want to see a movie that bad, then there you go. Just because it's open, that's what I'm saying. If some people don't think it's still a risk or something, then don't go. But give the people an opportunity to make a choice.
Yeah. Like with my issue with going to the movies right now is, and this is something that I felt throughout the COVID situation, is that I don't give a crap if I get the virus. I don't care. I'm past that. But if I were to get the virus and then transmit it to my family or to my friends, that would be unacceptable. If I were to sit in a movie theater and somehow transmit the virus to a stranger, whether I know that or not, and it happens, I couldn't live with that. That's the variable that I can't uphold. And unfortunately, with the way that things are, we don't have any guarantee that that's not an issue. There's nothing in the science that says, okay, well, as long as you're 2 or 3 seats apart, you're going to be fine. As long as we wipe down all the seats after every showing, you're going to be fine. They keep saying, stay out of enclosed spaces. If you're with a bunch of people, be outside. So the risk versus reward thing is really kind of skewed. And this idea of, well, if you feel safe, come on down. And if you don't. It That's kind of misleading. Like, it's not really about whether I feel safe, but uh whether it's actually something that is safe. It's not necessarily it's not really up to me to decide those things. I'm not a scientist. I can't make those decisions. I can't look at a theater and go, "Well, I think they're pretty competent. I'll put my life in their hands." I'm not smart enough to make that decision. And I don't think that the people that have been hurting for 8 months because nobody can come to their theaters are the best people to trust in terms of saying, "Oh, we're totally safe." No, come on down. We have all these protocols in place. You're
Yeah,
going to be okay.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm
They're
saying give
they
people.
have had no income for 8 months.
Well, you got to give people the
They're
opportunity to
not
make a
going to
choice.
be.
If you don't want to go to a theater, or if you don't
I
want to
mean,
go
I
somewhere.
suppose.
Well, I mean, if you don't want to go to a theater, if you don't want to go somewhere on the aspect of that you have someone at home that might get sick, then you don't get to go. It's like you don't bring a child or a baby into a theater if you think that, or if your baby's going to cry. If you know that your baby is 2 years old and is going to start crying its head off, don't bring them to a theater. You don't have the right to go because that's going to ruin everybody else's experience. But if you're a person that doesn't have anybody that, let's say you live alone, you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s or whatever, you don't have any close family or something, give the option to make your choice, to make your thing of it, and then you disinfect yourself, and if you end up getting COVID or something, you quarantine. But you can't shut people down and close down businesses because people are losing their everything they've built their life for. That's the issue here, is you have to give people the opportunity to make a choice. You make a choice rationalized on the basis of who are you protecting? Are you in fear of it yourself? And you make a choice on how, like, for instance, I work at a gym. It's you sign a waiver and you're in. But we follow policies and qualities and stuff like that. You can still do that at a theater. There shouldn't be another system in place where it's going to shut you down again on the basis of we need to be locked inside our homes again. It just doesn't make there's no excuse for that.
I don't think I agree at all.
That's
Uh,
fine. I mean, it's like I said, it's not an argument here. I look at it on the rationalization that I had known people that have committed suicide from their business being shut down and their whole life savings going down the drain. So I look at it like I think you should have a choice. Me, I don't have anybody at home where I can get sick or infect anybody. I don't go and party. I don't go hang out with friends a whole lot. So I'm like, I'm fine. I was not afraid of getting this thing when it first started out. I think that's at one point it's going to push people to that. At just what time is that going to be? I'm not fighting for theaters to be open. I'm not fighting for someone to open up their business just because I want to go. But I don't feel the need to be put down on lockdown. That's just it. If people can hang out at parks, if people can walk around, I've seen people walk around with no mask, no nothing like that. But then once you're in a building, you have to do so. And then now they're telling you you can't get it on surfaces. This is where I have an issue. Is that it seems like they keep lifting restrictions to be like, oh, well, we thought this, and then it turns out it's this. There's going to be a vaccine, hopefully, but I don't like the depression factor that rides on this thing. It's very scary for a lot of people. I've just from like I said, seeing businesses shut down and knowing people that I've lost. It's just the whole aspect of that. What would it be like if that didn't happen? If this virus didn't happen, they'd still be here. They would still have their business. That's what I look at. Like, you have the choice to make there. And the depression factor, I feel like, is a lot that a lot of people can't handle, especially nowadays where we're tearing at each other's throats. That's where I fight on that side, is that I think we need something right now. We need a win. And right now, there's not seeming like there's going to be another win in sight for a while. So I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, it's it's really kind of a it's there's really not a good way to go about this. Uh, this is a situation that is constantly evolving or devolving, depending on how you look at it. It We have gone through so much shit in 8 or 9 months, only to seemingly come back to square one. So there's really it does not feel like a scenario that is winnable. But at the same time, I think that lockdowns are I don't think that any lockdown is entered into willy-nilly. I don't think that it's something that people say, "Okay, we're gonna do this, and we haven't considered how this affects people." Does it negatively affect people like the people that you know? Yes. Is that tragic? Absolutely. Uh, but also, it does keep people alive. It has hurt people, but it also does keep other people alive. So I'm sorry for the people that you've lost. I truly am. Uh, and it's a terrible situation. It's absolutely terrible. But
there should
I'm
be a
not going to sit here
line.
and pretend that I have an answer because I'm not an expert.
I'm not
I
asking.
just know that
I'm not asking for an answer. What I'm thinking here is then there should be a line. If you have loved ones, like I have a grandmom who's 90 years old, stage 4 lung cancer, who doesn't remember who I am. She doesn't live anywhere near me though. My mom goes over there and takes care of her, and my mom understands the risks, but I have none. I don't ever see. I don't go. I can't go over there. There's no point. Nobody remembers me. So I just look at it like you should have the people that are more viable, just like Bill Gates said, which is why everyone does not like him, is the vaccine, the issues with it all. And he was saying that the best people to go and get the vaccine were the ones that would be the ones that would get coronavirus and have the most side effects or the most damage to them, the elderly, the sick, the ones that were already getting infected, or the ones that were, I guess, the prime cases of these are the people that we need to save and put on lockdown. But healthy individuals, people that take their, I mean, I know plenty of people who've had coronavirus, and besides not smelling and that taking a while to come back, that's been it. And that's not saying that's an excuse for anything out there. I just look at it like it's very hard when you enforce a lockdown because they do the guise of 2 weeks. It's not just that. I'm very close to Florida where they don't even have any restrictions. And I have friends that live down there and they say everything's open. And people, they're trying to get back to a sense of normalcy besides the mask. I think, whatever, wear a mask, who cares? But being stuck inside your home, and then they put out a $5,000 fine if you were outside the curfew, was like, you're really, this is where we're pushing the boundary here. Like, I hate that it turned into Corona talk here, but you got to look at all aspects of things. That you gotta let people make a decision for themselves when it comes to trying to survive. Because you could say this thing will be over next month, and then we could still be, it's 8 months in, almost 9. So it's like, okay, you started off saying 2 weeks. That didn't work. You're slowing the spread of this thing. So do what Florida did, do what any other country has done. Italy, I'm pretty sure, is they're not back to square one, I don't think yet. I know the UK just went in second lockdown, but it's a mixed thing of emotions where you just got to let people make the decision for themselves, because the issue is then they're struggling at home trying to pay the bills and they don't have a job because they're not working. Like, we're back here, there are businesses that are closing down again. Okay, that's the owner's choice. But then, like with the restaurant industry, they were making way more money off unemployment and the benefits to that, to where they just fired off all their workers, and now people are calling the unemployment line trying to get money. It's like, it's the issue. It's difficult to deal with this thing. Nobody has an answer. I'm not giving an answer. I'm giving a perspective here. It's very difficult with everything that's going on to add more stress on top of that. I'm saying give people the freedom to make their own decision in their life. If you know you have people at risk, don't take the risk. But you should be able to have your freedom and be able to make your choice. It's like, I wouldn't tell you can't piss after 7 p.m. You're like, what the fuck? I got to get up in the middle of the night and go. Well, you can't. That's what a lot of people are kind of dealing with, is that I don't have, besides keeping fast food places open, which is nuts. It's the whole factor of you're not letting me make my own decision in my own life.
Yeah, I guess my central issue with these things is that whenever we tend to let people be completely kind of independent in their own decisions in these situations, when we give them the facts of, this is what's going on, this is how this thing is transmittable, this is how you can stop it, this is how you can be responsible, people will tend to say, okay, but I don't want to do that. Even if they say, hey, this will keep people alive, you should really do this, you should really wear a mask. Not because it will help you per se, but because it will help the people around you. And then people will say, well, it impedes on my freedom. And that's kind of what happens when you let people make their own decisions.
You know how far they get? They get stopped at the door. Because if you come into my work, my gym, and I'm not a big mask guy either, but there's signs and we don't let you in. That's what businesses will have to do. You don't want to wear a mask, then you can wait outside. You're not getting anything from here. Those people will be weeded out. And now it's become so normal wearing a mask. You always have one in your car and you always remember to go into the store with it. It's just instinct. It's been taught into you already, been programmed in there. So that's what's going to happen. You're going to have those people that aren't going to want to listen. You're going to have businesses that aren't going to want to follow those procedures. That's on them. And if you're that afraid of it and you don't like how they're not wearing masks, then don't go to their store. We're picking at problems with each other because this is like our one time in our history where we really haven't been at a war. We haven't had a major crisis besides the pandemic, which united us for a little bit. But then now we're back at picking at each other's throats again because we've been spending way too much time in the house and we need something to take our stress out on. It's like, I'm not going to go watch a movie that I know I fucking hate with Jerry Seinfeld or something. No. I want to go there and just sit there and bitch and ruin everybody else's experience. So why would someone go do something like that?
With these situations, my issue is people, yeah, I mean, if you have a business and you get to decide, hey, we can tell you whether or not inside this business. If you decide not to, that is their personal choice. That is something that they, as proprietors, have the right to do, I suppose. But it's also people who have knowledge of the situation saying, hey, please do this. Just to be like a good citizen, please do this. You're not required to, but we're trying to keep people alive. Please, for the love of God, do this. And the response is, nah, I don't want to. No, it's not for me. And it's that kind of attitude that I don't think helps this situation. I think that that actually makes it worse.
I agree
And
100% with that. Yeah.
unfortunately, there's this kind of weird conflation that uh, asking somebody to be responsible and to look out for their fellow man or woman, uh, to do that is to trample on somebody's rights. And it really speaks to how polarized we are as a country. It speaks to how polarized we are as people, that we could look at something as simple as, hey, wear a mask so you don't give other people a deadly virus, and have other people look at that and say, oh well, it makes me feel uncomfortable, so therefore my rights are being infringed.
That is that I agree with you on that one. I think that's ridiculous if someone does something like that. I think you should follow procedures. I just not I'm not liking the whole lockdown, stay inside your house type thing. That's just from you can like we have businesses open, you just follow procedures. That's the same thing within Florida too. You follow the mask procedure, you don't get into the business. If people don't like the rights factor to it, then okay, then just go home and deal with that or be out in the open, whatever, or you don't have to wear a mask. My issue is the being locked on in your house and being fined if you leave. That is the issue that I don't like with it. I think you should be following restrictions. I think there's too many things to be fighting about besides dealing with if someone wants to wear a mask or not. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it. Chin acne, whatever. But I wear one because it's what you got to do with my work. So it's how you got to function in
Yeah.
the world.
I mean, I hate lockdown, but I've been working from home since March. Every single day, I wake up, I go downstairs, I telecommute for 8 hours. I have been more depressed and despondent in the last 8 months than possibly ever in my entire life. It is the worst experience I've ever had, but if it means that I will be helping keep other people more healthy or not endangering other people, it is a sacrifice that I'm willing to give.
Understand that there's people out there that don't have that opportunity to do what you're doing or working from home is a thing. A lot of people have physical jobs where I'm a desk person at a gym. I can't fucking telehealth from that if the gym's closed. You know what I mean? So it knocks people out of jobs and stuff. Like I worked at a casino, which we stayed open until June, secretly, as in I was security. We had to protect money. The casino was closed. You can't telehealth from some certain job positions, and that's the side I'm looking at, is these people that aren't like you where they can work from home like a lot of people now. They don't have a job at all and they're struggling to try and feed a family with just how difficult it has become. And then people that take advantage of the system and want to go off unemployment because it's making more than what their actual job was. It's a mix of emotions. Like I said, we're figuring this out. I know people have talked about coronavirus, so I'm ending it kind of here with this is like it's so impacted where we're never going to forget this. We're never going to really move on. It's going to be either obviously it's going to take some time with everything that's going on, but it's always going to be talked about. And that's an issue is because we have so many other factors that we need to work on. People, for instance, we're very, very divided. And that's a really big issue is we can't ever come together on anything. And if we do, it's over hating somebody else. We need a big enemy. We always need a target. And we're dividing each other up right now. We're picking at things in movies. We're picking at things in songs. We're picking at everything. Want to cancel a lot of stuff. Some of it you should evolve to a different perspective, but you're forcing this change to happen so quickly. Like even with TV, you didn't see two dads or two moms on a screen until way after the fact that we've been seeing that everywhere in real life for the longest time. Everything's got this slow build up to it. So it's like trying to put times 5 speed on something. It's going to take some time, but we can't be splitting at each other's heads because, like I said before, people don't like being told what to do. And when you're forcing people and not giving them an option, then it creates conflict. So it's like a mixed bag of emotions here. I mean, everybody knows what's going on. Honestly, we're all trying to get to the next day. It's the whole factor of it. There's the people that really want to focus on trying to move forward, and there's the people that just don't want anything to do with it and just want to go back to the way it was. I don't have any answers at all for this. It just stresses me out because you see the world hurting so bad, and then it's like, what's the fix? Like, how do we get back to not even a sense of normalcy? I want it to be better than it was before. I want people to be closer. I want all these things, but it's hard to do, you know?
Yeah, it at times it feels unwinnable. It feels like there's no good options. It feels like it doesn't feel like hope is really a factor. But I mean, I in times like these, all I can really do is stay to the best of my ability informed and listen to those who have some modicum of knowledge and who have some modicum of authority. And I can't ever say that that I will get a hold on this situation, or that I can see where it's going, or that I know that there's a definitive right side. I just can try to carry this out from day to day. That's the best I can do.
Hope for the best.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate you for giving me your time today, man. I'm sorry to bring that last bit down to Corona talk, but I appreciate you for giving me your time today, man.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Is there anything you want to promote? You want to promote the podcast where people can find the Coolness Chronicles?
Yes.
I love the name.
Oh, thank you. Coolness Chronicles is it is a kind of a pop culture history tour where we talk about the history and legacy of Mystery Science Theater 3000, the greatest television show in the history of television. We talk about every single episode. We go in order from the very beginning of the show to the very end, and go episode by episode, and then use those episodes to talk about other movies, other TV shows, comic books, theme parks, a bunch of stuff. It's not an average podcast. It's a very, very strange experience, but I enjoy doing it so much. And then my other podcast is called Reels of Justice, where we take movies and put them in a courtroom setting. So we have a defendant, a prosecutor, a judge, and a jury, and we try to determine whether or not a movie is guilty or innocent of being a bad movie. And
Green Lantern, come on.
That may be coming up soon. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but that might be on the docket in the future. But we've done everything from like Fight Club to Jason Takes Manhattan to Josie and the Pussycats to Scream was a recent one.
What did Josie and the Pussycats get?
That one was not guilty.
And Green Lantern better be not guilty, or I want a fucking retrial.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. So the Coolness Chronicles, you can find it iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. It's on Twitter at CoolnessPodRyan, and Reels of Justice, same thing, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, everywhere. On Twitter at Reels of Justice.
I'm gonna speak for the judge and say not guilty.